Hello, we are back for a casual February wrap up. I have been kind of slow on picking up on videos with this channel. At the beginning of the year, I think I've just kind of hit a wall of ideas. So let's hope that the ideas and everything starts slowly coming back so that I can continue making fun book videos. But if I can't think of something that I want to talk about, I don't want to force it, and I don't want to like make a video just to make a video. So this ultimately is just a channel for me and my book journey, for me to look back on and possibly find other people that are reading similar things as I am. So if I can't think of something to talk about, then I just won't talk about it. So that is kind of what's been going on over here. As I said in the beginning of the year, I am trying to do more, what's the word? More intense, not intensive, intuitive? No, intentional, another I word, intentional reading this year. So I am reading books that I have been wanting to read, and I'm taking my time with them. And sometimes I get kind of like carnivorous. Is that a fun word? Carnivorous with my reading, where I just want to read a book as quickly as possible and take it in and move on to the next. And I've been really trying to soak in these books a little bit more and take my time and, you know, enjoy other things that I like to do outside of reading in my small free time that I do have. So I've been kind of focusing on like my shows, my movies, and different things that I also like to do outside of reading. So that has taken some of my reading time away. But ultimately, I think I'm finding a really good balance for me, and I still think I'm probably going to read quite a few books before this year is over. So we are only into February. Let's go over what I've read. The first book I read this month was We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. This is the same author as All the Colors in the Dark, or All the Colors of the Dark. I always get that confused, which was a really big popular book last year. This was a book I actually had before I read that one, but of course I read the other one before I read this one. So I finally got around to this one. Very, very similar vibes. If you liked All the Colors of the Dark or All the Colors in the Dark, you will probably like this one. Almost to a detriment, where I felt like this was too similar to the other book. That's the only issue that I had with it. A lot of the same thoughts I had about that, I had about this book, but since it felt like my second time reading a very similar premise with very similar characters and story plot, it didn't hit me as much. So I think I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was fine, but I definitely felt like I was reading the same book, if that makes sense. So if you really like that book and that's what you're looking for to read again, pick up this one, because you will probably like this one as well. You definitely have that strong young female character, rebellious, trying to, you know, solve a crime and running from dangerous people, and her, you know, cast of supporting characters, friends, family, and it just kind of unfolding as you read. But the one thing I did realize when I was reading this book was Whitaker's writing sometimes leaves you a little bit confused. He'll pull out a character that you maybe mentioned, you know, in the beginning of the book, and then you're like, who is that again? And then he also tends to have like cliffhanger at the end of chapters and kind of drops you there, and then you move on to something else, which sometimes that's okay, but it's a constant thing, and it's sometimes hard to follow the mystery at the end when he's giving you answers. You're like, oh yeah, who's that person? Or oh yeah, like why did that person go there? Where is that person? So you're kind of confused a little bit as you're learning what happened. So that's my only thing, is sometimes I feel like I'm not quite getting it, and I have to kind of like Google or read a Reddit thread to figure out exactly what happened, because I always feel like I'm missing something. But yeah, it was still a decent read. I'm glad I read it. But if you're not looking for another book like All the Colors in the Dark and you didn't care for that one, pass on this one. If you love that book and you're looking for something very, very similar, this one is your girl. This one will take you to the exact same place. The next book I read this month was They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hanif Abderraqib. This author wrote the book There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension, which I read last year and I really enjoyed. And so I knew that this was another popular book of his. It is basically a collection of poetic essays of anecdotes and things from his life, connecting the music that he enjoyed at that time and where he was in his life, and a little bit of a reflection on culture and maybe why that music was popular and why that music resonated with him and a bunch of other people that were fans of those bands. He also talks about famous historical figures. You know, it's very Hanif with the way that he goes in and out of so many topics, but they are all stringed together and you don't quite know how you got from one to the next, but you do, and he does it so beautifully. So I really like this one. I actually may have liked this one more than On This Year in Basketball and Ascension, because I felt like I could follow it a little bit better just with the writing style. It's still very poetic and dense, so if you don't like that kind of prose, then you probably won't like any of his writing. But if you do like that, because it is very beautiful writing and very impactful, then I definitely say pick this one up. And then that makes it so that I think I only have one other book of his that I haven't read, A Little Devil in America, and I think it's a commentary on Black performance history, and I actually have that book, so I will probably be reading that in the next couple of months, and then I think I will have read his major 3 works. I think he obviously is an essayist and has a lot of writing in journals or magazines or, you know, online publications, but like his actual body of work, his written published books, I think those are the main 3. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. Hanif is very much a millennial like I am, so he grew up in a very similar time that I did. I think he's a little bit older than me, but a lot of the same bands and music that he mentioned I had connections to in my youth, so I think that added to why I liked it so much. Alright, and then my favorite book of the month, and this is probably no surprise, but it's taken me forever to get around to it because it is so big, is The Will of the Many. This was on my big books list for this year. I have a bunch of big books that I have been wanting to read that I am prioritizing for this year, and this one actually was a big book that I wanted to read last year, and I sat on it all last year and never got around to it. And you know, in some way I'm kind of like, wow, I really missed out on it, but in some way I'm kind of like okay with it, because the way that it ends makes you really want to pick up the second book, and the second book hasn't been published yet, and I think it's not even, I don't even think the publication date is set. I think it's expected later this year. So in a way I'm kind of glad that I didn't read this too long ago, because 1, I would have forgotten a lot of things, and 2, I would have just been annoyed that I would have had to have waited so long for the second book. But it's also very exciting because I love being part of a series as it gets released. I know some people really love a book series when it's all out there and you can just speed through the whole series, but I do like anticipating the next book. So I am kind of glad that this book, or this book series, hasn't been completed so that I can read it as they come out. I think that's really fun. So this book is kind of like a fantasy dystopian that takes place in like a Roman Empire-esque world. The architecture, the vibes is very Roman Empire, togas, and like just imagine like the Colosseum and like that kind of architecture. It's very much in that time, in that world, but there is this hierarchy that is in this world where people higher up in the hierarchy can kind of pull the will from those in lower social classes than them and use the will from those people to have stronger powers and use it as magic. So it's a very interesting concept. I can't say that I 100% understand how it all works still, but you understand it enough with the story. And this is very like Harry Potter meets Hunger Games. Like, you know, with the Harry Potter books, each book was like a year for Harry, and this is very much like that kind of pace. Like, you start with the main character getting pulled out of obscurity, going to this school where he's learning to hone or learning to use his will, trying to figure out mysteries throughout the year, coming across different characters, And then I just realized I've been holding this mic up and I haven't been recording. So apologies, because the first half of this video is going to be horrible audio. So yeah, apologies. I hadn't been recording anything on my mic. I had just been holding it up as a prop apparently this whole time. So if the first half of this video is really crap audio, I apologize. I did not know I was doing that. Back to this book. It is very like following him throughout the year, all the people that he meets, trying to figure out different, mysteries and different things that he has to figure out, and then culminating to the end of the year, a big climactic scene, a lot going on, and the cliffhanger literally left me staring at the wall. I don't do that very often. Honestly, even big twists don't leave me that shell-shocked for the most part. I've read so much that I'm kind of like, okay, cool. But this one, I was like, I knew there was going to be a cliffhanger on this because I know so many people talk about a cliffhanger, but the cliffhanger that was here was beyond any of the ones that I could have guessed. So even me telling you there's a cliffhanger, I don't think there's any way you could guess it. There's no way you could guess it based on the stuff that goes on in this book. Because, when I was reading it, there's little things here and there, and I was like, oh, maybe that's the cliffhanger, or maybe this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. No, the cliffhanger, it totally kind of blows your mind, and it's totally something that you cannot guess. So that was really fun, and it really makes you think about what happened throughout the book. And yeah, just really enjoyable. I gave this 5 stars. I really, really, really liked this. And this is a really popular book, and a lot of times with popular books, I kind of fall on the opposite side where I'm just not that impressed or not that into it. But this one, I get it. I really get it. And I'm so excited for the next book. I think it is called The Strength of a Few. So that's fun. But anyways, 5 stars. Really enjoyed this one. If you've been kind of interested in this one, pick it up. It's definitely like a slow, steady pace of plot throughout. So you can just kind of read it as you go. It's probably not going to be one that you devour, but that's in a good way. If that makes sense. I don't know. But anyways, amazing. I really like this one. The next book that I read was The Favorites, and this is a new release this year. It's by Lane Fargo. It was actually I think it was on my winter anticipated releases video. I'm pretty sure I talked about it. The thing that really caught me about this book was the premise is about 2 ice skaters, and they're kind of in a romantic on-again, off-again type relationship, and they're competing in the Olympics and all of the different drama and backstabbing and competition that can occur with that. It very much gave me the vibes of Tessa Virtue and Scott Moore, which is like one of my weird Roman empires, because they are a very famous Canadian ice skating duo that did really well at the Olympics, I think like 3 Olympics in a row, but they're Canadian, so I'm American, so who knows why I'm obsessed with them. I think it's just because when they skate, they have so much chemistry and they really sell it, and I love that. And even not being a huge ice skating fan, when I watch it, I'm just kind of like sucked in. So I really, really love watching them skate, although they're retired. You can go back and watch videos of them on YouTube. So this book's premise really gave me the vibes of those 2 skaters. And actually, after I finished reading it, I think I read in someone online that the author did take some creative inspiration from them. So makes sense, because it was almost too close of similarities, if you know what I mean. But anyways, this one was really good. It is very similar to the style of like Taylor Jenkins Reid's Daisy Jones and the Six. Daisy Jones and the Six is written as like an interview, and it's written like people are being interviewed in the present and talking about things that happened in the past and all of that. So this is kind of similar because you are reading the story, and then there's inserts of documentary style interview portions where people are reminiscing or remembering different things that happened that's going on in the book at that time. So it's very similar to that. It's a very, very quick paced read. It is full of drama, full of will they, won't they, back and forth, strong characters. I just found it really enjoyable. I had a good time reading it. I actually started reading it and then something wasn't grabbing me in the very beginning, so I kind of put it down. And then I saw more and more people picking it up and singing its praises, and so I picked it back up and I finished it, and I'm glad I did. I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It was really good. Then I picked up And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. This was, for me, one that I had been kind of holding on for a while and not reading. He is the same author that wrote The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns, 2 books that I absolutely love. 5-star, possibly 6-star book. No, not possibly. They are like 6-star books. Like, they are 2 of my most favorite books. I think I would probably rank both of those in a top 10. I love them so much. So this was kind of the last book from this author that he has published, last like major adult fiction book. So I was kind of saving it. I didn't want to read it because once I read it, I knew I'd be done with everything that he's published so far. And because I loved those other 2 books, I had a feeling I would love this one just as much. And I did love it. I will say, I don't think I love it as much as the other 2. I think if I wasn't comparing it to the other 2, I probably would have given it even more, or I probably would have thought even more of it. But because I was comparing it to the other 2, it was already kind of coming from behind. I gave it a 4.5 and I rounded it up to a 5. So it might not be like a 6-star read in my mind, but it's still 4.5, 5 stars. It's so good. It's very much like his other books in a sense that he really knows how to write characters and make you really feel for them and really get emotionally invested. And that's what I love about his writing. And there's so many lines that he just writes so beautifully, and he's able to convey feelings and moments so eloquently. So the only drawback I think that kind of held me back with this book that I didn't love as much is there's so many characters that you follow in different time periods, and you're going in and out, and you're trying to remember kind of how they are all connected to each other. And, you know, you are kind of left hanging, or you don't get the exact answer about what happens to each character. So I think that that's a pretty strong criticism of this book. But to me, I looked at it as you're going to see a piece of each of these people's lives and how they were all affected by one event that happens in the beginning of the book. And you might not get the resolution and conclusion to everybody's story, but that's how life is. And so that's kind of how I took it. It didn't bother me as much. Anyways, I really enjoyed this one. Sad that I don't have any more to read from him. I'm hoping he publishes something soon, or, you know, I think this book was his last one, and I think this one was published in 2013, so almost 10 plus years. Like, we need more, please. 5 stars. And then lastly, this book kind of finished out my month. It has been on my TBR for some time, and it's not a long one, so I picked it up just to kind of round out the rest of the month, and that is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I haven't read any Colson Whitehead, so I hadn't read his other book, The Underground Railroad. This one I had picked up. I don't know why this one in particular from all of the books that he's published, but this one is the one that I had, and it is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now, I see why it's the winner of the Pulitzer Prize, but at the same time, I don't, because I don't know how to describe this. I don't know what it did so revolutionarily. Is that the word? I don't know what it did that was so uniquely different than what we have seen before, I guess. And that could just be my ignorance. I'm not sure. This book is following a young boy who is put into a reformatory school post-civil rights movement in the South, and it was basically schools for young boys, and a lot of young Black boys were sent there and mistreated, and it wasn't really a school. It was more of a place to put these boys that society didn't know what to do with, or a place for the white judicial system to put these boys when they didn't want to have anything to do with them. And a lot of boys were here for very minor offenses that didn't warrant that punishment. Follows a young boy that is sent there, and basically all the atrocities that he sees, that he comes across. I think that the reason this one didn't hit me as much is because I did just read late last year The Reformatory by, I think it was Tananarive Due. I can't remember how to pronounce the author's name. I'll throw it up on the screen. But it's also a very popular book about reformatory schools. And that one I felt like maybe was done a little bit better. Or maybe because I read that one first, the stuff in here I felt like I was kind of repeating and it wasn't anything new. So maybe that was why, because the premise of that book and this book were too similar. So I feel like I was rereading the other book in a sense, even though I think the other book did it a little bit better. Or at least I enjoyed the other book more than I did this one. This one also near the end, it was kind of jumping timelines and I was kind of confused and not following it as well. I think if you haven't read anything on reformatory schools, this was probably very eye-opening, or if you didn't know anything about reformatory schools. But because I had already read books with that premise and knew about them, I guess this just didn't impact me as much as if I was unaware of that subject matter. So this one I gave a 3-star. I thought it was fine. I thought it was written well for the most part, but like nothing stood out for me, I guess, with this one. Nothing really drew me to it, if that makes sense. Kind of where I land with this one. And that was all that I read this month. I read, what was that, 6 books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books this month. Pretty much on pace with last month. And I did fit in that big chunky book, The Will of the Many. And so I think I will continue to kind of add in like one big chunky book each month, because I think once I'm done with the big chunky book, I'm ready for kind of shorter stories and something that I don't have to read as long. So I think that'll probably be my strategy. And then I didn't read any Ann Patchett this month. She is the author that I'm trying to read her backlog. So I need to definitely pick up an Ann Patchett in March to continue that goal and continue to get through. I guess last month when I read Bel Canto, it just really threw me off because I really didn't like that book. So I wasn't really excited to pick up Ann Patchett because I'm scared that if I read another one that I don't like, that it's going to really make this goal hard for me this year. And I thought a little bit more about that. And I was like, you know what? If I don't like the next book I read from Ann Patchett, I will be okay DNFing it, and I will be okay with changing that goal and picking a different author for this year. I think what I'm maybe going to realize, I'm not sure because I need to read a little bit more from her, but I guess Bel Canto just really scared me. What I'm realizing is I think I like modern Ann Patchett, maybe not her older books. Maybe that's the issue here. So we'll see. We'll see with my next one, kind of what fork in the road I diverge off of, depending on how my reading journey goes with that one. And then also next month, I am really looking forward to Suzanne Collins's Sunrise on the Reaping. Yeah, that's it. Sunrise on the Reaping, which is the new Hunger Games book. I have that pre-ordered, so I'm so excited to get that one. I am really excited to read it. It is Haymitch's games and the backstory on Haymitch and that character. And I love that character, doing that and seeing the lore. So I'm really excited about that book. That is kind of my general March plan. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for being here. That was kind of my long-winded outro. Let me know what your favorite book of February was that you read, and what your plans for March are, and give me some inspiration of some books I should add to my TBR. I always love seeing what people are reading, because then I go and I look it up on Goodreads, and I usually will add it to my own TBR. So go ahead and comment below and let me know, and subscribe if you're not subscribed, and give me a like. I really appreciate it. It helps me with the algorithm and finding more people that like what I like, and I appreciate you for being here. So I will see you in my next video. Bye.